Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the August 2020 LEA Special Education Point of Contact monthly webinar. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. For those of you who are just now logging on, I do want to share that a copy of today's presentation is available for download. If you look inside of GoToWebinar, there is a section for handouts, and uploaded is a PDF version of the slides that we will be covering this morning. If you are having concerns accessing that handout, feel free to send us a chat or a question through your user chat box to get that information as well. We'll be getting started in a few moments. I still see some attendees logging in. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. For the folks who just joined us, we want to make sure that you have checked out our handout section and that you have a copy of the slides downloaded if you would like to follow along. And we will transition into getting started for the August LEA Special Education Point of Contact monthly webinar. Good morning. My name is Tiffany Ingram, and I'm one of the program analysts here at OSSE. And I'm happy to be hosting the webinar this month and sharing a little bit about many things around start of school. We have a full presentation for you this morning, so I will make sure we transition, let you know a little bit about our agenda. We'll be going through some policy reminders and updates. We have some IDA monitoring updates as well. We also have some non-public updates, as well as LEA guidance for transportation services. We'll go through that. We do have some SEDS updates to share with you as well. We'll be talking a little bit about the LEA POC webinar survey that was sent out right towards the end of last school year in May and June. We'll talk about the results of that. And then we'll also do a review around announcements and reminders for your LEAs. Since this is the start of the school year for us, we wanted to go around talk a little bit around the role of the LEA Special Education POC. Some of the folks on the call are new to their role and some people are returning, but just to do a quick overview of kind of your role in this and being the LEA POC for your school. So we have policy and guidance. You'll be the LEA's liaison with OSSE for special education policy guidance, providing updates and clarification as needed. You'll be identifying key areas needed for technical assistance and professional development. You'll also, in the role of monitoring and compliance, act as a liaison between OSSE IDA Part B monitoring and non-public team, ensuring implementation of dispute resolution, correction, and non-compliance. Around evidence-based practice, you'll be supporting your LEA staff and leveraging OSSE's resources on evidence-based practices and serving students with disabilities and sharing those training opportunities for your staff. Lastly, around our data, apps, and systems, you'll be serving as a SEDS administrator and trainer on the behalf for your LEA, and you'll be accessing and leveraging student information data from our multiple data systems such as CLICS and SLED. We want to really highlight on this is that you must be listed in eSchool Plus as your LEA special education point of contact in order to receive official OSSE communications that are intended for your role. So if someone forwarded this link to you, or maybe there may be folks who are new to your LEA, make sure that the correct people are listed in eSchool Plus as we pull this information to send out emails and other publications, so you will be aware of training opportunities and other policy or guidance updates, etc. So you want to make sure you are correctly listed in eSchool Plus. So our key focus here is to understand that our special education POCs must work together with other folks within your LEA. So through assessments, pre-K special education, POC, early childhood transition, transportation, your LEA data manager, as well as your English language learner coordinator. So you will liaison, have various relationships with all these folks, because we know that special education touch so many points within a LEA. You will have to work hard to collaborate with all of these folks within your organization. So of course, we do want to leave you with some contact information. You can screenshot this. Again, you do have this handout here in your tab under handouts to download this presentation. But this is all of our points of contact in every area: policy monitoring, evidence-based practices, your data apps, preschool, as well as assessments and transportation. We're going to kick off the webinar and turn it over to Christy with our policy updates and reminders.
Good morning, everyone. This is Christy Weaver-Harris, the Policy Manager in K-12 Systems and Supports. I wanted to give you guys a couple of quick updates. So since the start of the public health emergency, OSSE has issued a series of IDEA Part B FAQs. And on July 21st, we issued a consolidated and comprehensive guidebook for the start of this school year that contains guidance on LEA responsibilities under Part B of IDEA relating to the provision of FAPE in instances where your LEA is required to either close your doors or limit access to buildings because of a local or national emergency, and you've transitioned to distance or blended learning models. So previously issued guidance related to the provision of IDEA Part B is consolidated throughout and is organized to be consistent with special education processes. So we took the previously issued FAQs and kind of reorganized them for so the issued guidance to IDEA Part specifically regarding parent training and counseling as a related service, the distinction between homebound instruction and optional distance learning, and serving students who are medically fragile. LEAs are encouraged to review this guidance to support your delivery of special education to students with disabilities during the transition to blended learning models or to remote learning for the 2020-2021 school year. Next slide, please. To give you a quick reminder of your obligations under CDB transition, so under IDEA and under local law, LEAs are responsible for ensuring a smooth and effective transition of children from IDEA Part C early intervention services provided by DC Strong Start to IDEA Part B preschool special education and related services provided by your LEAs. This includes ensuring that the LEA participates in transition planning conferences as appropriate. So in this instance, The transition conference invitation is sent by DC Strong Start Early Intervention Program, and that transition conference invitation constitutes referral for the purposes of initial evaluation. When invited, an LEA must attend the transition planning conference to provide information on your LEA and your programming. And reasonable efforts for the purposes of initial evaluation include attempting to obtain parental consent for evaluation at that transition conference. So attending the transition conference is part of your reasonable efforts under the initial evaluation timeline. Your obligations under early childhood transition also include developing an IEP by the child's 3rd birthday. And this includes adhering to the initial evaluation process and timeline, completing the eligibility determination, and if the child is found eligible, developing the IEP. In that instance, we do encourage LEAs to use the data and information provided by DC Strong Start Early Intervention Program and the child's parent to inform the initial evaluation process and IEP development. And finally, the LEA is responsible for implementing the IEP by the child's 3rd birthday. This means that all specialized instruction and related services in the child's IEP must be provided by the child's 3rd birthday in accordance with some specific state established requirements. So specialized instruction must be provided by the child's 3rd birthday. And if the child turns 3 on a non-school day, specialized instruction must be provided on the first day after the child's 3rd birthday. So by the first day after the child's 3rd birthday, we mean the day that the child is stage 5 enrolled in your LEA. So the day that they are present for distance learning or present at your LEA. And all related services must be provided at least once within 14 days of the child's 3rd birthday. If the child turns 3 during the summer and did not qualify for related services as part of ESY, so if the child turned 3, had ESY, but did not have any related services, all related services must be provided at least once within 14 days of the first day of school after the summer. So all related services for all students have to be provided at least once within 14 days of the child's birthday. But if they had ESY but no related services, those related services must be provided at least once within 14 days of the first day of school for that student. So that's, again, when we say the first day of school, in this instance, we mean stage 5 enrollment for that student. These are all requirements under the DLVDC lawsuit that I hope that you're all familiar with. If you are not, we have additional guidance available on our website, and you are always welcome to email me directly with any questions around your obligations related to C2B transition. Next slide, please. So on July 28th, OSSE finally issued our early childhood transition FAQ. This document was born out of a working group that we convened in 2019. And in that working group, LEAs provided insight to OSSE on barriers to the transition process. And we tried to be very thoughtful in addressing the specific issues that were raised during those meetings. So we've incorporated in this document responses to help clarify expectations and practice aspects of the work between DC Strong Start, DCPS Early Stages, and charter school LEAs. And we very sincerely thank all of you who participated in that working group for your partnership and your assistance. It was quite an undertaking, and we really do appreciate your feedback. I hope that you see your thoughts and your feedback and the issues that you raised in this document. And highlights of this frequently asked questions document include, we provided some information on charter school LEAs and your responsibilities to participate in transition conferences for all students who are stage 4 or stage 5 enrolled in your LEA. We encourage you to anticipate invitations to participate in those meetings and plan staffing to ensure that you have meaningful participation in those meetings. Please also plan to attend transition conferences for any student for whom you receive a transition conference invitation from DCPS. In that instance, that means the family has notified DCPS that it intends to enroll in your LEA. And in the FAQ, we also provide some information on what DCPS would require of the parent before they would reach out to you. They really do require a level of documentation of their enrollment in the charter school LEA. So these activities will improve your LEA's ability to plan for the arrival of and service delivery to students within the first 2 weeks of enrollment, as required by the DL lawsuit that I just went over in the previous slide. The FAQ also goes over some information on referral. Again, the transition conference notice constitutes referral for the purposes of initial evaluation for students who are transitioning from Part C to B. It also has some information on reasonable efforts requirements for referrals. From when you receive a referral or a transition conference invitation for a student who is not enrolled or a student who is not yet enrolled in your LEA for the current school year, LEAs remain responsible for responding to referrals, including conducting reasonable efforts to obtain consent. The FAQ additionally includes information on special circumstances, such as which LEA is responsible for ESY, and students who are transitioning from an IFSP, an extended IFSP at age 4. And please see the last page of this document with extensive resources and contact information for support in all of these activities. This work is a priority area focus for the district as a whole and will continue to be the subject of focused monitoring and technical assistance in the coming year and years after. Next slide, please. OSSE reminds LEAs during the start of the school year that while student enrollments are underway, LEAs may not exclude students from enrollment based on their disability, and this may include an inability to complete toileting tasks or delays in toileting that are a result of the student's disability. Doing so constitutes discrimination on the basis of a child's disability. LEAs are encouraged to design individual supports through the IEP process in instances where a student's disability impacts their ability to perform age-appropriate toileting skills. Please review your policies and parent handbooks and revise those documents if necessary to reflect expectations related to toileting and definitions of school readiness for students with disabilities who may have delays in toileting due to their disability. We have seen some problematic language in LEA handbooks, so I very strongly encourage you to look at this and make sure that your language is consistent and appropriate. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to us. We do want to do our best to make sure that no one is discriminating against students on the basis of their disability, and especially when that's an unintentional discrimination, okay? So if you have any questions around any of these issues, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Again, this is Christy Weaver-Harris, and I think you guys know where to find me. My information is on the last slide also. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Christy. We will transition into Dawn sharing a little bit about early childhood focused monitoring.
I apologize for the delay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dawn Hilton, and I am the Special Education 619 Coordinator in the Division of Early Childhood. My role is to provide LEAs with technical assistance related to students transitioning from IDEA, Part C, Early Intervention Services, to Part B, School Services, and for students receiving preschool special education services. In an effort to improve the district's outcome for 3 through 5-year-olds, we are continuing focused monitoring in 3 key areas: child find, initial evaluation, and C to B transitions. On June 30th, 2020, OSSE sent notification to LEAs who did not identify 8.5% of their 3 through 5-year-olds. The vast majority of LEAs in the district did not meet this requirement based on federal fiscal year 2018 data. OSSE is currently reviewing LEA level data and will provide 3 through 5-year-old focused technical assistance to your LEA in coordination with any additional technical assistance required by your LEA's findings in child find monitoring for 3 through 22-year-olds. Please anticipate contact from me this month regarding child find practices. We will discuss your LEA's child find related activities, including screening, referral, and notification to families of the availability of special education services. We will also discuss how your LEA might improve these practices to ensure that students in this age group are appropriately identified. As a general rule, OSSE encourages all LEAs to post in their buildings notification of the availability of special education services for students ages 3 through 5. As for CFSA referrals, in our efforts to improve the overall identification rate for students ages 3 through 5 in the district, DCPS Early Stages and OSSE is facilitating child find efforts for children referred by the DC Child and Family Services Agency, CFSA, to LEAs. Please anticipate notification from DCPS Early Stages of any child who is referred to them by CFSA who is stage 4 or 5 enrolled in your LEA. These DCPS Early Stages notifications constitute a referral and should be logged into SEDS as such. Your LEA should begin referral activities according to existing requirements. During fall 2020, OSSE will review these CFSA referrals in our SEDS system to ensure that LEAs are addressing these referrals with fidelity. Please anticipate outreach and technical assistance from me in instances where referrals are not appropriately logged into SEDS or activities after referral are not conducted and reflected in the SEDS system. Next slide, please.
Dawn, I only have one slide for you. If there is any additional information that needs to be shared, please let us know if you have additional comments you want to share with the group as of right now.
No additional comments. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information was, I believe, on the 3rd slide of this presentation. I am available for any questions.
Definitely. And we will also include Dawn's information at the conclusion of the presentation. If you have any questions from the slides presented thus far, please feel free to put them in the chat, and Christy and Dawn will work to review and answer your questions as we go throughout the presentation. We'll turn it over now to Karen for IDEA updates.
Good morning, everybody. This is Karen Morgan Donaldson, manager of IDEA Part B monitoring. Over the next several slides, I will be reviewing OSSE's Prong 2 process, and I will also be reviewing the monitoring and technical assistance schedule for this coming school year. Next slide. So as the state education agency for DC, OSSE's role is to monitor implementation of IDEA Part B. In exercising its monitoring responsibilities as the state agency, we must ensure that when it identifies noncompliance under IDEA, the noncompliance is corrected as soon as possible, but in no case later than 1 year, 365 days. In order to do so, OSSE uses a 2-prong approach when verifying the correction of noncompliance. You'll often hear us talk about Prong 1 and Prong 2. Prong 1 is where the LEA corrects the individual student level noncompliance, and Prong 2 is where the LEA demonstrates that it is now correctly implementing on a systemic level the specific regulatory requirement. Last year, OSSE revised its Prong 2 process. Any report released in DCCATS after July 1st, 2019 will adhere to the new Prong 2 process. And so the next few slides, I will be reviewing exactly what that looks like. Next slide, please. So this slide should look familiar. It compares the old and the new Prong 2 process. We did present this at last year's Start of School Summit, but I do want to review it one more time. So prior to last year, OSSE monitors for the Prong 2 process would pull random samples of current files from SEDS from your LEA to review. With the new process, LEAs are able to select their own files for review. We'll go into that a little bit further in a couple slides. The number of files that are reviewed has also changed. In the past, monitors would review from 1 to 10 files, depending on initial numbers of noncompliance and the size of the particular LEA. The new process involves the review of 1 file per every 5 non-compliant files. So for example, if an LEA has 8 non-compliant files, LEAs must submit 2 files for review. The number of files maxes out at 5, so there's a maximum of 5 files. And lastly, the new Prong 2 process provides more guidance around the process for when there is no data available to review. In the past, additional data was sought for the entire year, and then we came across that 365-day timeline, and we kind of ran into some issues there. With the new process, additional data will be sought for 2 consecutive periods or 60 days. Next slide. So this slide just provides you a link. DCCATS, which is the system that we use, created a tutorial that we shared with you. If you would like a refresher, or if this is new for you, on how to complete the Prong 2 process in DCCATS, please access this link. It's available here on this slide. Next slide, please. So going a little more depth into the Prong 2 process, there are 2 steps in completing the new Prong 2 process. Your first step is, once you've completed Prong 1, so once you've completed all of your student level corrections that were found to be non-compliant, you as your LEA, you're going to identify student files for OSSE or your OSSE monitor to review. So you are now responsible for providing OSSE the files to review. So using an example of an initial or reevaluation compliance report, as an LEA, you would find a file where the eligibility meeting took place after the current report. For example, if your LEA was flagged for an untimely initial eligibility in the initial eligibility Q2 report, that would be from October 1, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, you would identify student files where the eligibility occurred after that report date, so starting January 1st, 2020. So that's the first step, identifying files that you want to provide OSSE to review. The step 2 is to provide the student information for your OSSE monitor to review in DCCATS. So you want to enter the name and the USI into the Prong 2 report in DCCATS. Again, if you are unfamiliar with this report in DCCATS, please reference the tutorial on the previous slide. Once OSSE reviews the student's record to confirm timeliness, your OSSE monitor will upload the student's final eligibility report and approve it to close out the Prong 2 process. So a quick reminder, Prong 2 is your LEA's opportunity to demonstrate that it has completed the necessary steps to address any issues of systemic noncompliance within your LEA. So again, this is your opportunity to demonstrate that you have made the changes and you are in compliance for the particular area of regulatory requirements. Next slide. This slide gives you an idea of what monitoring will look like this next year. We are moving to an annual monitoring schedule. So we will be monitoring for secondary transition in spring, reevaluation in spring, initial evaluation, child find monitoring, C2B transition will be monitored in the summer. Significant discrepancy and disproportionate representation will be in the spring, and then significant disproportionality will be monitored in summer. And the next slide is a segue into what we're moving to an annual monitoring approach, but at the same time we are embedding technical assistance to support LEAs in those areas that we're monitoring. What we found from the past year the quarterly monitoring and doing these data reviews was not necessarily improving practice at LEAs. So we are trying a different approach. LEAs in need will receive TA quarterly touch points on initial evaluation, C2B, child find, and reevaluation. The focus will be on data review, root cause analysis, improvement in practice, and results for students with disabilities, and of course, creating continuous improvement plans. Again, this allows for a more meaningful and simplified approach to monitoring and supportive technical assistance. LEAs will receive a memo in September that will give more detail and more information about this technical assistance, so please keep a lookout for that. And I believe that's it for my slides. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Yes, thank you so much, Karen. We do have some non-public monitoring updates to share with the group. Just reminders around the non-public monitoring process. Please note, you may have seen this slide before. This is a reminder to folks, and I will also share the non-public monitoring team's contact information in the next slide. Just some cleaning up of SEDS that we want to highlight for LEAs and making sure that data is up to date and complete, and that our non-public school staff have appropriate access to student records to document the provision of services. If there are any additional questions about non-public monitoring and how it will look for the upcoming school year, please feel free to reach out to Edgar Stewart and Sharon Powell. They have also provided some additional resources here if you have any questions around non-public monitoring for the upcoming school year. We will turn this over now to Rita Larkins, and she will share all about SEDS and updates for the upcoming school year.
Thank you, Tiffany, and good morning. I'm going to be sharing a few updates as we get ready to start our transition to the new school year. So as we transition to the next slide, I just want to lead in talking about transitioning to the next school year in SEDS. I'm going to also just talk briefly about caseload setup and account management, and then some SEDS system updates that you will see in the system this year. Actually, I believe they are active as of this Friday. You should have received an email about some of those updates. And then we'll talk about access to records and then getting support in SEDS. Next slide. So just as a reminder, we want to ensure that you are rolling over your system to the 2021 school year. This is just a quick snapshot on how to go in and add the additional or the next school year, which is 2021. And then you need to add that school year in the drop down. That's on the left-hand side. Make sure that you are adding the current school year. This impacts what documents users are able to access in student records, and to make sure that you have all the current and up-to-date information in your system. So be sure to flip your system to the 2021 school year. Next slide. Also at the start of the school year, another important task that you are assigned with is the SEDS user audit. So as you are creating accounts for users at your LEA, you also want to deactivate users that no longer work at the LEA or users that no longer need access to student files. That also includes non-public. So in your users tab, when you go to the users tab in SEDS, next slide, you'll notice that there are a number of state level roles. You want to make sure that you do not modify any of those state level roles. Those roles impact our ability to assist you when you reach out for help and support. So as you're going through your list, you want to make sure that you are only accessing those special ed and other related roles that are in the system. And those are the roles that you see checked off here on your screen. In the next slide, you will be able to see or put a check next to any user that should be removed. So if you had a teacher that's not returning, you want to go through and delete and then inactivate that selected user. Keep in mind, deleting the user from the system does not remove them from the database. It just makes their account inactive so that any records that were created while they were a user, we still have access to that information in the system. So you're actually inactivating selected users. In the next screen, this is where you can go on your menu bar to access those inactive users. So if you need to reactivate someone, instead of creating a brand new account, you can go to the inactive users and then search for that user to reactivate the user in the database. Next slide. Be sure that you are taking care of the needs of your non-public staff and their access for SEDS. Non-public SEDS points of contact, those are the folks that are assigned for coordinating access at the non-public. Those people or those individuals need to be able to access SEDS. So having the ability to create aggregate access accounts, and they'll need to do that through the OSSE. So either the SPED POC at the non-public or the LEA POC will be the person responsible for creating an OSSE ticket if that individual should need an aggregate account or to have a school added to their current account. Next slide. In our caseload setup, we want to just remind everyone that OSSE does not set up caseloads for users. So you are responsible, this is another one of your duties, responsible for ensuring that those caseloads are set up. And so that includes your special ed teachers, related service providers, and non-public staff. In this screen, I'm sorry, just back. Thank you. Okay, just wanted to make sure also that you know quickly that you have the ability to copy and transfer caseloads to different users at your LEA. And these steps are outlined in the SEDS Administrator Guide. Next slide. Finally, I would just want to share a few updates that you will be seeing in the screen. There was some, in SEDS, there was some communication that went out about the new update to the disability worksheet and category name, formerly listed in SEDS as mental retardation, will now appear as intellectual disability. And so that's for any worksheets where the category or the title of that disability appears. You'll now see that updated. You will also see a non-binary gender option listed in the student's personal information. And then finally, the Update IEP tab. So that is allowing those changes that a user would make under the Update IEP tab to remain visible. So it's staying on the selection that it was last updated. And then you are still able to see the updates in the detail in your student history page. And those are some of the major updates that you're going to see at the start of the school year in SEDS. So this is just a demo of the pages that you'll see, those disability, one area I talked about. So everywhere on the disability worksheet that was previously labeled with mental retardation, the highlighted yellow is just showing you where you will see that updated language throughout those disability worksheets and on other pages that name the disability. Next page. Okay, in your SEDS update, we talked about the IEP update. So it will save the last selection so users are able to identify the last update on this page. Previously, it was not doing that. Folks were unsure about whether or not it saved your changes. So now it will save that last selection. You're able to quickly identify the update. Next slide. I'm just going to talk just a little bit about getting support for SEDS. So if you run into an issue in the system or you have specific questions, data system questions about SEDS, I think most folks know that you have to enter an OST ticket. By entering that OST ticket, that allows us to track your issue and to also provide a response in the system. So LEA Special Ed POCs, that's the folks on the line today, you and the data managers are the folks that have access to OST. Special ed teachers, related service providers, and other staff should not contact OSSE or be entering OST tickets. So that should be coming from the LEA Special Ed POC. You should really think of yourself as a front line for SEDS questions and issues, and then you are able to answer those questions within your LEA and then escalate issues that you're not able to address for additional support. Next slide. We're just giving you a quick, for people that have not seen this, I think most people have, but if this is your first time seeing this, this is simply how you would go into the OSSE support tool to add a request for support, a request for transfer of student records. And then you can also review any transfer records request. Next slide. So please note that your student records will transfer, and they will be following an automated process for the 2021 school year. So for this year, no approval will be needed from the previous LEA in order to transfer those records. So you should only be using, for this year, you should only be using the transfer record process in the event that the automated transfer did not occur, or if you're still not able to access the student's record, that's when you can use the OST transfer process. Next slide. And in our transfer of special ed records, this just gives you a breakdown of the stages of enrollment and when the LEA special ed POC should request records transfer using the OST. So you don't have to have the former LEA now confirm it in OST. We are using an automated system this year. And I believe that is the last slide in our SEDS update presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Tiffany.
Yes, thank you so much, Rita. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We will have hopefully a few moments at the conclusion of this webinar to answer some of your questions. But if you have questions as we go throughout this, feel free to drop it in the chat for us. I will turn this over to our transportation team. Douglas and Wesley will talk a little bit more about our guidance for transportation services for this upcoming school year.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Douglas Johnson. I'm management analyst for OSSE DOT and administrator for the TOTE system, where you all will submit transportation requests in for your students. Next slide, please. So LEA consideration and decisions for school year 2021. As we shift towards preparation for the 2021 school year, there are key preparation items that LEAs will need to consider and decide. They will be critical in preparing transportation services for eligible students that will be receiving any in-person education for the 2021 school year. So we have student level, students assignments. How will students be assigned to a particular schedule? Meaning a cohort, so which students will be in school on which days. Prioritize service preparations and data submission for students with disabilities. Make sure you submit the required school calendars and transportation request forms that are needed for the students. In our note section, if the considerations and decisions are delayed into transportation preparations, LEA should consider and prepare to utilize the parent or LEA reimbursement options. If your LEA is not offering in-person services for students with disabilities, there's no action required at this time. So if you all are not going to have a transportation at the beginning of the school year, we are strongly suggesting that you still submit your calendars in the system and notify us when you know what your expected first day of school may be. Next slide, please. LEA transportation guidance for school year 2021. These are the key operational processes for LEAs to make note of in order for DOT to appropriately complete start of school preparations and to deliver timely service at the start of school in the new school year. So we have the category, the milestones, and the owners and the deadlines for those transportation, for those tasks. Data submission, which is responsible by the LEA. There's school calendars and TOTE, and also a calendar upload assistance can be provided if you contact the TOTE support line. And submit student transportation request forms. That'll be by the LEA as well. Then also we have the transportation activities, which are done by our team, which includes data validation, verification, system configuration, data transfers, routing development, and the Q&A process, route assignments, practice routes per LEA/school communications. So that's the side that OSSE DOT will handle. The dates in the table above are based on the start of school on August 24th and August 31st. DOT will conduct outreach to LEAs that have start dates on or before August 24th, 2020. LEA's data submission should be no fewer than 30 days prior to their first day of school. And also we can be reached at the TOTE support line, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., 202-576-5520, or at dot.data@dc.gov. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us as far as any needs of transportational needs. And that's all that I have today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Douglas. I do see some questions in the chat around transportation, and we are definitely getting to those, and hope to be able to answer all of those by the conclusion of the webinar. I do want to share our outcome of our LEA Special Education POC webinar survey. So at the conclusion of the 1920 school year, we sent out a survey to all of our LEAs to obtain feedback around how we can best support you here on our monthly SPED POC webinars. And this is the outcome of our survey. Just some themes identified. More than 70% of survey participants would like our monthly webinars. They want consistency in the meetings, providing materials in advance of the webinar or at the start, and looking for quick follow-up of documents to be posted online, looking for more interactive sessions, ability to answer more questions, and improve quality of information, and request to formalize communications within the webinar. And lastly, following up emails, answering questions presented during the webinar as well. During the survey, LEA shared what they would like to learn. Some of you all shared learning more about our databases, CLIC, DCCATS, preparing for child count and distance learning, LEA and non-public responsibilities, as well as home and hospital best practices. In addition, learning more about SPED compliance and IEP development best practices, including leadership tips and building an effective team, and understanding more about the district-wide metrics and showcase best practices of other LEAs. We do want to say that we are taking your feedback into consideration. Today we have our handout here. It is in PDF format. I just corrected that as I saw in the questions. The initial one was a PowerPoint, but we also are looking to obtain more of your feedback every month so we can grow and best serve you. The purpose of this webinar is to provide quality information to you all. So we want to ensure that LEAs are actually benefiting from the information that we present on a monthly basis. So do not hesitate to share your feedback with us and sharing more ways that we can help you all, particularly starting this very interesting start of school. I'm going to turn this over now to Jennifer Carpenter, and she'll be sharing some reminders and announcements from the teaching and learning team. Jennifer?
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to make sure that everybody remembers very quickly that this summer there was an opportunity to learn more about our student data click applications, and those resources are available online at this time. Next slide, please. Thank you. There are also archived resources around SEDS training and additional resources that can help you to navigate and troubleshoot around using SEDS. Additionally, the start of school training videos for LEA special education points of contact are available at the link where it says missed the training in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. This includes training for SEDS Train the Trainers, recordings of our monthly points of contact webinars, TOTE trainings, early access, and the toolkit that we presented this year, this summer, for serving students with disabilities remotely and in blended contexts. Now there is the introductory webinar and all 3 technical assistance sessions available online. Next slide, please. There's more information on this slide. You can go directly to the LEA toolkit for serving students with disabilities at the link at the top of this page. Please do, if you haven't had a chance, check this out. It is a free data dashboard that you can use to ensure that you are collecting all the data that you need to serve your students and help improve their academic and social emotional outcomes, mitigate regression, and support recovery. Next slide, please. All right. Finally, I just want to let you know that our next PD bulletin is forthcoming with all of our fall opportunities. I saw in the feedback from the SPED Point of Contact survey a request for more IEP development training. While everyone else was talking, I was adding registration information for this fall's IEP Quality online course, which will run from October 13th through December 17th, and you'll receive more information about that in just a couple of days, including a link to register.
Thanks so much for sharing those updates, Jen. We want to thank everyone for coming and joining our webinar this morning. We do want to list OSSE point of contacts here. I do want to note that our next webinar will be Wednesday, September 16th, and the link to register is listed here. Through this link, you will be able to register for all of our webinars in the series. So when you register here for our September webinar, it will also register you for all webinars until the end of next school year. And our last webinar will be in May 2021. If Christy or Karen see any questions that maybe will be useful for the total group to review at this time that we've seen in the chat, feel free to jump on and share what you've seen here, that questions that folks have asked during this time in the chat that will be beneficial for everyone to hear.
Hi, everyone. This is Christy Weaver Harris. I do want to provide a point of clarification related to CFSA referrals and early stages role. We got some questions asking why CFSA wouldn't just submit referrals directly to LEAs, and you're correct. CFSA does and will continue to make referrals for students that are enrolled in LEAs directly to the LEA, just as they do now. So this process is really specifically for a very discrete population of students within CFSA, and this is students that are in-home care placements. That means that they are under CFSA supervision, but they are in their own homes. So DCPS is facilitating CFSA screening of those children, and then DCPS receives the results, confirms the results, and then sends that to the charter LEA. So this process will not change how a charter LEA receives any other referrals or how a charter LEA reacts to a referral. It's really just a partnership between early stages and CFSA for the specific purpose of improving screening and child find activities for that very discrete group of students who are in-home care placements. This is an effort that's born out of the DLV DC lawsuit. So if you're seeing difficulties with those students, please feel free to reach out directly to me or Victoria Glick. But sorry for the confusion there. It really shouldn't change your current referral process for those students. It's really just a very small subset of students that we're trying to improve our child find activities around.
Thank you for that clarity, Christy. Are there any other questions that were provided in the chat that may be beneficial to the group?
Hi, this is Karen Morgan Donaldson. There were a couple questions about Prong 2. Somebody asked if the Prong 2 report in DCCATS will prompt and populate how many files need to be, or how many student USI/names need to be provided, and that is the case. So once your Prong 2 report is up and open in DCCATS, it will automatically populate how many files you need to provide for the Prong 2. A follow-up question to that was, how do we know when the Prong 2 report is available? The Prong 2 report is not available in DCCATS until your Prong 1 is completed. So in order to complete Prong 1, you need to make all student corrections, and all of those corrections need to be approved by your monitor. Once Prong 1 is completed, you will be notified by your monitor that it is complete and that Prong 2 is available and open.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that clarity. Rita or Douglas, were there any questions in the chat that around SEDS or transportation that you feel is beneficial to share with the group before we conclude our call today?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Tiffany. There were a number of questions around who is allowed to request access for non-public users. The non-public SPED POC or the LEA SPED POC is able to request access through the OST.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we did have a question on transportation, and that was from Laura. She asks, what is required if they're going to open virtual for transportation? And my answer was that we are still recommending that the LEAs create their calendar in tote at this time, and if they know their cohort information, they can put that information in the system as well. And if they're not starting to let's say October or November, just ensure that they're putting in their transportation request 30 days prior to their start of school, so we can route the students in a timely manner. And I did make sure that you email us as well at dot.data@dc.gov of your school's tentative in-person start date. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Douglas. And for people who—
Hi, everyone. This is Christy Weaver Harris. I'm also seeing quite a few questions from non-public schools. While we are excited to see that you're on a webinar and you're welcome to attend. I do want to clarify that these webinars are generally specifically designed for LEA special education points of contact. So the information presented here may not be directly relevant for non-publics. And non-public schools, if you are having difficulties accessing databases that you think that you need access to, please reach out directly to the LEAs that serve your students specifically. So if you're having an issue with a specific student, please feel free to reach out to that student's LEA of enrollment. That's going to be your best and first point of contact for resolving those sorts of issues.
Thank you for that clarity, Christy. Also, if you are participating in our call today and maybe you were forwarded this link from a colleague and you would, we want to make sure we capture your email address. So if you want to make sure your email is captured, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We had a lot of questions this morning, so we want to make sure that we follow up and hopefully be able to post some of the questions online. You will find this presentation on our new website, which I can follow up with teams via email once that information is published online. So a recording of this video will also be on our website as well. So if you want to make sure you are included in that follow-up email for our webinar today, please feel free to add your email to the chat. Otherwise, it will only go to folks who registered directly for this training this morning. This concludes our August 2020 LEA SPED POC webinar, and we look forward to seeing everyone September 16th at 10 a.m. Thank you so much.